I was telling that in the last session, for example, this is the gastric wall and these are the cells of the gastric glands. So, gastric glands and cells of the gastric gland actually secrete three type of fluids. The number one, that is the hydrochloric acid, and number two, that is the proenzyme, that is known as pepsinogen, and third one is the mucus. So, these were the secretion of cells from gastric gland. So, now it is observed that, or we have seen that, what happens from the G cells of the gastric gland or the gastric wall, G cells, the cells are known as G cells, they actually secrete one hormone that is known as gastrin hormone. This is the gastrin. So, gastrin is one hormone that is known as gastrin hormone, and this gastrin hormone actually stimulates the secretion of the what? Pepsinogen, and again this pepsinogen is known as what? Proenzyme. This is not active enzyme. So, this is known as zymogen or pepsinogen, and the secretion of the pepsinogen is stimulated by the gastrin hormone. This is also secreted from the gastric wall and specially from cells, they are known as G cells. Okay, this is all about the secretion from the wall of a normal mammalian stomach. So, then what happens? At the end of each peristaltic wave, the formation of pasty food material, that is known as chyme, that was I also told in my last session. This is known as chyme. So, what is chyme? This is a pasty, this is a pasty substance which is formed due to what? Semi-digested food material and mucus, and that pushed into the duodenum through the pyloric sphincter. Okay. So, this is all about the structure of a typical mammalian stomach. But now I want to describe about the stomach of the ruminants, because we know that most of the cattle or generally cattle, they are voracious eater, they browse grass and take the grass into their stomach or into their alimentary canal very quickly, and how this is digested. So, in them the stomach is again very the stomach is to some extent modified one. So, in many ruminants the stomach has 4 chambers. How many? 4 chambers. For example, if this is the stomach, for example, just I am giving one idea, this is the stomach, then the stomach has 4 chambers. The first one is known as rumen. The name of the stomach is known as rumen. This is also known as paunch, P-A-U-C-N-H, paunch. So, rumen, the first part of the stomach is known as paunch or rumen. The second part is known as reticulum. This part, for example, is just, this is one idea. So, I shall show you detail in diagram. So, this part is known as reticulum. This is also known as honeycomb part of the stomach, the second part. And third part is known as omasum. This part is known as, you have to remember this one, omasum, because these are 1 mark short question. That is omasum, and last part is known as abomasum. This is the, for example, this part is known as abomasum. This is also called as rennet, R-E-N-N-E-T, rennet. So, 4 parts are there. For example, this is one part, this is another part, this is another part, and this is another part. So, this is not exact diagram, I shall show you detailed diagram. So, I just want to acknowledge you the name of different parts of the stomach in case of the ruminants. So, where they are found? In case of the ruminants, they are the grass browser, that is the browsers, especially the cattle. So, this is found in case of the cattle. So, in case of ruminants, these are 4 chamber. Rumen, in them, rumen is the largest chamber. Rumen is the largest chamber. The lining of the rumen, the lining of the internal lining of the rumen and reticulum is thrown into finger like processes, that is called as rugae. So, this is rugae, the finger like projection coming from the wall of the what? Rumen and reticulum, that is known as rugae. and rumen, that is the omasum, and abomasum has longitudinal, they have longitudinal folds of the stomach, but gastric glands are found only in the abomasum. Gastric gland is also found in the abomasum. Okay. So, it is claimed that. So, now question arises, so which is actually the true stomach? So, it is claimed the first three chambers are modification of the oesophagus. First three chamber, what are they? The first one is rumen and reticulum and omasum. They are the first three chambers. So, they are the modification of the oesophagus. It is claimed that, or scientists claim this one, and abomasum is this true stomach. The abomasum is the true stomach representing the cardiac, fundic and pyloric part of the stomach, because you know that in mammal the stomach is divided into three parts. The first part is the cardiac, then the fundic and then the pyloric. So, these three parts are been confined into the part that is known as abomasum as per the observation of the scientist, and three parts, that is the first rumen and reticulum and omasum, they are the modification of the oesophagus. So, this is wrong conception. So, this is the what claim of the scientist, but practically this is not true, the wrong conception, and embryologist proved that all the chambers are the parts of the real stomach. Again, so all the parts. So, as per the observation, observe the real study, so it is proved that what the all chambers, that means the rumen, the reticulum, omasum and abomasum, all are the real stomach. Okay. So, in camels, so just one exception is there, camel is also a mammal. In camels there is no omasum. The rumen and reticulum have pouch like water cells which were once believed to store water, but they are probably digestive. So, this is the exception in case of the camel. So, now you see, just I want to show you the location of the what different parts of the stomach in case of the that is the cattle, or in case of there are the ruminants. So, ruminants means the cattle. So, you see this is the what? This is the oesophagus, and oesophagus, this is oesophagus. Oesophagus is opening to the first part, this part is the what reticulum, and this is the what? This part is the, you see, so the oesophagus opens to this was the rumen, this is the rumen part, you see this is the rumen, and this part is the extension was the reticulum, and this part is the, this yellow part is the omasum, and omasum opens to the abomasum, and this continue to the intestine. Okay. So, this is the location. See, this is the whole is the stomach. You see, this is the rumen, this is the reticulum, this is the omasum, and this is the abomasum. So, now I shall show you how the food actually circulates throughout the stomach, because you know whenever one cow is grazing, whenever one buffalo is grazing, it is continuously taking the food material. So, once the food material enters into the body, you think that it will enter into the stomach and digestion will be start in the intestine after passing of the chyme into the intestine, but practically this does not happen. In case of cow or in case of the cattle, in case of the buffalo also, whenever they take the grass, that is enter into one part of the stomach, then it is coming back, when they are resting it will coming back, and that will be again what? Chewed by this cow, and finally it will be taken. So, how it is happening I shall show you in this diagram. So, you see this is the esophagus. So, whenever this is taken, the food material is enter to the rumen. You see this is the rumen. So, now this arrow represents the passing of the path of the food material, how it is entering into the stomach. So, now you see this is the esophagus. Whenever the food is taken into this one, so this is passing through this one. So, this is the rumen, then it comes to this. So, now it is stored. When the cow is resting, at that time it is again coming back to the reticulum. Okay. So, from reticulum it is again chewed, from enter into the mouth, it is chewed and then enters into the omasum, and from omasum then into the abomasum, and this is the connection of the, this part is the connection of the intestine. So, this is the pathway that I have depicted in this picture, how the food material is passing in the stomach of the ruminant. Okay. So, this is all about the stomach of mammal. So, now in this picture just I want to acknowledge you to bring some knowledge regarding the modification of this alimentary canal, because I have covered maximum part of the alimentary canal, because stomach is the most largest part of the alimentary canal. Up to this the food material will be stored, then the food material will enter into the intestine, and in the intestine the food material will be digested. So now in this slide I want to show you, in the picture I want to show you the modification of stomach in different vertebrates. So for example, you see this is the cyclostome. So in cyclostome a primitive alimentary canal is there, very simple. You see this is only long tube. Then the second one, the bony fishes or fishes, in them you see the stomach or the duodenum or the intestine is been coiled. So this is esophagus, then the stomach, and this is the small intestine where the coiling starts. And again you see this is the amphibians. In amphibians the alimentary canal is mostly coiled. You simply see this is a straight tube. So gradually the tube is bending, it is coiling. So when this becomes the amphibians in course of evolution, you see this becomes a much coiled tube. Then you see the reptile, it is again more and more coiled. You see this is the bird, it is more and more coiled. And when this becomes the what? The mammal, it becomes more and more coiled, very larger one. So in this picture just I want to see you how the simple form of alimentary canal is been modified in her tetrapods and become a long and coiled tube. So this is the diagram. Okay. Now let us enter the next part of the alimentary canal. This is the most important part of the alimentary canal, because this part is exclusively designed for digestion of the food material, because till now I was concerning about how the food material will enter into the alimentary canal, but in this part of the alimentary canal we shall see how the food material is digested. That is the most important part, and that is known as intestine. Okay. So stomach follows to intestine. What? Stomach follows to intestine. Again this intestine is of two parts. This is divided into two parts. The first part is known as small intestine, that is known as small intestine, because in them what happens, or in this part the diameter of the alimentary canal is smaller, so it is small intestine. This is not small, the diameter is narrower, so it is small intestine. So this will follow to the next part, that is known as large intestine. So this is the large intestine. In this case the diameter is more in comparison to the small one. So you see this is the diameter, you see this is the diameter, so this is the diameter, so the diameter is more, and this is the diameter, it is less. So less diameter small intestine, large diameter what is large intestine. Okay. So as per the diameter is named. So intestine is coming, or it is followed by the stomach, and in this session I shall mostly focus on the small intestine, and in some cases I shall also tell about the large intestine. So small intestine is long, narrow and coiled tube after the pyloric stomach. It is the most important part of the digestive tract, because the digestion and absorption of the food material take place in it or in this region. Okay. This is the most important part. I want to show you, for example, this is the intestine. Okay. So this is the actually lumen. So food material is present here. So mostly the food is digested here, and after digestion the food material will enter into the capillary wall, and this will be finally enter into the blood, and this blood will circulate the digested food material. So absorption will be also held in this region. So in case of cyclostome, so we shall start again we shall discuss the intestine of one by one what tetrapods or one by one vertebrates. So the simple vertebrate is the cyclostome. We shall first see what is the nature or what is the condition or what is the structure of intestine in case of an cyclostome. So in cyclostome the intestine is a short straight tube with a spirally arranged longitudinal flap extending into it. Again in cyclostome the intestine is a short straight tube with a spirally arranged longitudinal flap extending into it. In elasmobranch, so this is all about the cyclostome. Then come to the fish. The fish, again it is of two types, that is the fish I shall discuss one by one. The first fish is the cartilaginous fish, second fish is the bony fish. So, in case of elasmobranchs, in case of cartilaginous fish, it is divided into a small and large. So, what I want to say, in case of cyclostome, this is the primitive vertebrate, in them this is a single straight tube, that is intestine, but in case of elasmobranchs, in case of cartilaginous fish, it is divided into small and large portion, that is the large intestine and small intestine, and the small portion has the spiral valve which greatly increase the absorptive surface. Okay. So, this is having the spiral valve in case of the what? In case of the elasmobranch. Then intestine of the elasmobranch I shall discuss in detail. So, intestine is always thin walled. In them intestine is thin walled and has extensive surface for the absorption of digested food material. That how it happens, you see. So, for example, this is the cross section of the intestine. Let this is the cross section. So, you see this is the cross section. So, here you see this lumen is extended, the lumen is folded. So, this is numerously folded. So, due to more and more folding, what happens? This will provide maximum surface area for digestion and absorption. This is the fold. So, these are the folds. So, these are the folds. Okay. So, the intestine is always thin walled and has extensive surface area for the absorption of the food material. So, I am telling about the what that is the elasmobranch or cartilaginous fish. As a rule, we know. So, a rule is there. As a rule, the length of the intestine in carnivorous animal is shorter. Again, you listen my sentence. So, for example, this is one carnivore and this is a carnivore and this is one herbivore. It is observed that in case of carnivore, the alimentary canal is shorter, or intestine, not alimentary canal, the intestine is shorter, and in case of herbivore, the animal, the herbivore animal, the intestine will be longer. So, it is shorter and longer. You saw in this diagram what I am showing. So, I am showing here, if this is the intestine of the carnivore, this is up to this length, and if this is the intestine of the herbivore, this is this length, because in case of carnivore, the food materials are digested quickly. So, it is a small intestine, but in case of herbivore, the digestion is very late because the vegetables matter takes more time or longer time for digestion. So, that has a larger intestine. So, what is the rule? So, as a rule, so you can again underline this one. As a rule, the length of the intestine in carnivorous animals is shorter than that of the herbivorous animal or herbivorous animals, because vegetables takes or vegetable matters take longer time to digest than the non-vegetable food. This is a rule. Okay. So, as our scoliodon or elasmobranch or shark or selachi, I am telling, so they are carnivores. So, in them a short intestine is present. Okay. Okay. So, short intestine, but they have increased surface area for digestion and absorption. Okay. Such a fold known as scroll or spiral valve has one edge, one side attached along the inner wall of the intestine, the other is rolled up longitudinally or on itself into a scroll, making an anti-clockwise spiral of about 2.5 tons. Again, what happens in case of scoliodon or in case of elasmobranch or in case of cartilaginous fish, folds are present in the intestine, folds are present, they are known as scroll or they are known as spiral valves, and this has or each spiral valve has one edge, that is EDG edge, one edge. So, for example, this is spiral valve. So, this valve has one edge. So, this is the edge. So, one edge. So, one edge is attached, it is attached along the inner wall of the intestine, and the other is rolled up, this other is rolled up, it is rolling up longitudinally on itself into a scroll, making an anti-clockwise spiral of about 2.5 turn, 2.5 turn. Okay. So, this is the important feature of the scrolling or folding of the intestinal wall in case of the elasmobranch. Intestine then passes. So, what happens? Intestine then passes into a tube of lesser diameter, and the rectum, which after receiving a bladder, like that is rectal gland of unknown function. In case of the elasmobranch, what happens? The intestine then passes into a tube that has a lesser diameter, and that is known as rectum. What is that? That is known as rectum, which after receiving a bladder like structure, the rectum is connected with a bladder like structure, and that bladder like structure is, in case of elasmobranch, is known as rectal. This is known as rectal gland. So, this is a gland, rectal gland. This is not rectum, this is known as rectal gland. So, what is the function of rectal gland? Till now it is not known, and finally rectum opens to a structure that is known as cloaca. So, this is all about the structure of intestine in case of, that is the elasmobranch, or this is a cartilaginous fish. Let us start the intestine of the bony fishes. So, bony fishes has a complex type of what? Intestine in comparison to the cartilaginous fishes. What happens? The intestine proper lies ventral to the, that is intestine of, so now I am telling about the intestine of the bony fishes, intestine of bony fishes, or that is the what? Osteochthyes. So, the intestine proper lies ventral to the intestinal bulb, okay, that is that of the what? Intestinal bulb means this is a part of the stomach. It is extremely long, more than 8 meter. What is that? More than 8 meter, lying coiled upon itself. The coils are bound together. So, for example, this is the intestine, you see. So, this is the intestine. So, this intestine will coil. So, you just, this is the coiling. So, this is coiling. So, you just see. So, this is coil. So, what happens? This coiling or the coils are bound together by adipose tissue in the mesentery and filling the entire abdominal cavity. That means, abdominal cavity of the fish is mostly occupied by this intestine. Based upon the nature of folds, in the internal lining, the intestine is divisible into an anterior region with numerous low obliquely transverse what? Folds, and a posterior region with longitudinal folds. Okay. So, what I am telling? Based upon the nature of the folds in the internal lining of the intestine is again divisible into two parts. The first part having the oblique and transverse folds, and the posterior region having the longitudinal folds. So, these are different parts of the intestine of the fishes. So, in case of fishes again, there are no intestinal villi. Means the mucous membrane or mucous layer of the intestine is not so profoundly folded to form the villi. So, there are no intestinal villi and no spiral valve. What? In case of the what? Intestine of the fishes. Intestine leads back into the rectum. Okay. In case of bony fishes, the intestine then backs, that is intestine leads to or open to the structure that is known as rectum, about a meter long. What is the length of this one? In case of them, the rectum, which is also known as large intestine, this is a meter of length. So, it is about a meter long with internal lining raised into conspicuous transverse folds. These are transverse folds. And finally, the rectum opens to the outside by the anus situated in front of the urinary aperture. So, my dear student, remember, in case of what? Cartilaginous fishes, this is known as cloaca, because cloaca is a common aperture where the urinogenital opening and the what? Opening for the alimentary canal remains in one place. So, it is a cloaca. So, cloaca is a common aperture for opening of the urinogenital what urinogenital what, that is the tube, and that of the what, digestive tube. So it is cloaca. But in case of this one, only anus is there. That means the undigested food material will pass by only one aperture, that is the anus. So rectum opens to the outside by the anus situated in front of the urinary aperture. So now come to the next vertebrate, that is the amphibia. So what is the structure of intestine in case of the amphibia, then we shall now discuss. So the small intestine, in case of amphibia, the small intestine is of short length and its lining thrown into transverse folds. There are no villi. In case of amphibia, again there are no villi. Anterior part of the intestine receiving the common bile duct, because in case of amphibian, bile is there, bile is secreting. So in anterior part of the intestine receiving the common bile duct forms a characteristic U bend with the cardiac part of the stomach, and that is the cardiac part of the stomach, and called duodenum. Internal folds of the duodenum, that means in case of the frog, the first part of the intestine is known as duodenum. So anterior part of the intestine that is receiving the common bile duct forms a characteristic U bend with that of the cardiac part of the stomach, and that is known as duodenum. So first part of the intestine in case of amphibia is known as duodenum. Internal folds of the duodenum, that means internally the internal folds of the duodenum are irregularly branched. Then duodenum, in case of the amphibia, the two parts are there, just I am writing one, duodenum, and the second part is the ileum. So for example this part, so example this is the intestine, and for example this part is known as duodenum. So this is starting from the amphibian duodenum, and this part is known as ileum. So what I am telling, so this is the intestine for example. So internal fold or the anterior part is known as duodenum. Internal folds of the duodenum are irregularly branched. In contrast to that, ileum, after making a few coils, ileum will coil, this part will coil because longer one. Ileum, after making few coils, passes back into a broad thin walled large intestine, that is known as rectum, that leads into cloaca. Again in case of amphibia, there is the common aperture, that is the cloaca, and this cloaca is the aperture for urinogenital system and the digestive system. That means the rectum will open that to that area where the urinogenital aperture is present. Okay. So in frog, an ileococecal, that is in ileocolic valve. So in frog, an ileocolic valve lies between the ileum and the rectum. So if this is the ileum and now this is the last part, that is the rectum, and this rectum will open to the aperture, that is known as cloaca. So this is the cloaca. So now you see this is the ileum and this is the what? This is rectum. So here this is one valve is present. So this is one valve. So this valve is known as ileocolic valve. What is that? Ileocolic. So this valve is known as ileocolic valve. So ileocolic valve is there. So ileocolic valve actually regulates the content passing from the ileum to the rectum. In them, in case of amphibian, liver is also well developed. I shall discuss liver in my next class, that is a gland. Liver is an external digestive gland. So in amphibians, liver is well developed, and the pancreas also, this is one external digestive gland, lies in the mesentery, stretching between the duodenum and the stomach. So these are the most important glands. They are also present within the mesentery, which is stretching between the duodenum and the stomach. So this is all about the structure of the stomach in case of the frog. And during my course of discussion, you have just observed this is all about the not the stomach, this is all about the intestine. So my dear student, during my course of discussion, you have now observed that, or you have now seen that in tetrapods, that means in higher tetrapods, this alimentary canal is to some extent more and more complex. Okay. So whenever we shall reach the mammal and we are observing that the structures or the components of the alimentary canal are more modified in case of the mammals according to their need or according to their mode of life. So, this is all about the intestine of the frog or amphibia. Let us take a break. In our next session, we shall discuss about the intestine of other higher vertebrates. Okay. Thank you, my dear students. We shall discuss in later class. Let us break this.